Let me read to you, if I can, from John's Gospel, chapter 20, 19 through to 31. Jesus appears to his disciples. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they're not forgiven." Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you see me, you've believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, yet have believed." Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Let me put that into context. It's one of my favourite resurrection accounts because first of all, it deals with Thomas, and I'll come back to that, but also shows the willingness of Jesus to enter into the real situation of those disciples. They were fearful. We're told that the doors were locked. I mean, surely, once they knew Jesus was alive, there was no need to lock the door, but there was. Right through to Pentecost, the doors were locked. Jesus came and stood among them and showed his hands and his side. And this is going to be so important because when the news is passed on to Thomas, it was very important for him that he was able to see, and he asked for much more. Jesus breathed peace on them. Surely that's part of the Easter message, isn't it? Peace. The peace that Jesus breathes upon those who belong to him. Do you need to have the breath of Christ afresh today in your life? Then Thomas's experience. Oh gosh, what an experience. He wasn't there. Now, I could spend a long time conjecturing why wasn't he there? What was taking up his time so much so he wasn't with the rest of the disciples? I could actually say some positive things. Perhaps he was so upset and hurt by what had happened, he didn't want to be with the crowd. He's not that kind of man. But then he finds himself in that place. And Jesus knew what he'd already said. And so he gives him the opportunity. You want to put your hand here? You want to see if I'm really risen or not? But this is the most important thing for me. He didn't do that. He didn't actually touch Jesus. He didn't actually need this affirmation that was being offered to him at that point in time. And he makes a declaration of faith. Now, this declaration of faith, my Lord and my God, is for me anyway, I think of it as probably the first early creed of the church, to be able to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord and to know what it is to fall down and acknowledge the lordship of Jesus Christ. Marvellous moment, really, in the life of the early Christian community. And he was saying that before they were saying it. He was saying it before there were any creeds written. He was saying it, and he was setting the way, setting the pattern that would be. You know, Beth Moore wrote part of a teaching series called Wrestling with God. And she declared the whole point is not about doubting, it's about coming out the other side with twice the faith you had when you went into your doubt. And certainly Thomas is going to be a marvellous example. It's said, of course, that Thomas knew what it was to give his life. Maybe he becomes a martyr for the faith. Maybe he goes to India and shares faith with people there. The truth is, Thomas becomes, for me, so important in this story. And Jesus chooses chooses to reveal something of his glory to him. Wonderful story about resurrection. And whatever your story is, you know, he wasn't a doubter. He was a believer. And I very sad when I hear people say, I'm a doubting Thomas, as though there's something clever in saying that. That's the one thing that Thomas wasn't. He was somebody who was able to declare, my Lord and my God. And you today, wherever you are, whatever your situation is, you too can know what it is to have trust and confidence in the God who is able to transform our lives.